Hey YouTube, it's Aiden here. I'm recording from my phone, so if it's a little iffy, it's because of that. Kind of a slow day at work, just waiting for a cake to come out of the oven before a tasting shows up. So I figured I'd make a video. I wanted to make this video because I noticed some people lately I've been discussing pretty much being able to cry on tea, or not being able to cry, or pretty much just those type of emotions on tea. I am 2.5 years on, and my experience with crying particularly, because I feel like a lot of guys can relate to the sensation of wanting to cry, getting emotional to the point where you want to cry, but you just physically, no tears come out. It's almost like you're crying, but you're crying without tears. Emotionally, you're crying, just not physically. So, I, too, had that experience. I'm just throwing out a number here. Roughly in the first month to 8 months. It was just hard to cry. I'm not exactly sure why that is. This is very common in the FTM world. I don't know why, but it just was. After that, now 2.5 years on, I can definitely cry. I think what the difference between crying pre-tea and post-tea is, I don't particularly cry about things that I used to cry about. Like, if I was really overwhelmed before tea, if I was really overwhelmed or really depressed, I would cry. But now, if I'm really overwhelmed or depressed, I don't cry. That's not the emotion that makes tears for me. I tend to cry mostly when it has to do with emotional things like, now I tear up a lot. That's the other thing. I don't like bawl. I'll bawl crying when I'm just completely worn out at my max. And that roughly happens maybe 3 times a year, 4 at most. But, I can tear up all the time. I hear a song that I like that's really emotional for me, I can tear up. If I see a movie, I can tear up, I can have a tear or two fall, but it's not like I'm crying. Like pre-tea, like when you cried, everybody knew you cried. You were crying. Now when I do cry, it's way more overwhelming. It's really uncontrollably hard for me to stop. Like, I can't stop crying once I start. And my nose gets all, stuffed, and my eyes, the next day, you can tell they're all swollen. And it seems harder, physically, when I cry, it's like a hard cry, as opposed to just, crying normal. It's like a sobbing, hard cry. But again, I cry more about things that are really overwhelming to me. I cry more about emotional things, like if I miss my family, or if I feel like I don't, I used to cry a lot because I feel like I didn't really have any friends, I didn't really know where I was going, but I have a good job, it was more of missing, and I just feeling lonely cry. But I don't really cry when I'm depressed. It's not like I'm having a bad day and I'm really depressed. I feel like I could cry, but I can't. Not that I can't, it's just, that's not the emotion that builds up crying for me. If I think about losing my wife, or losing my mother, or, again, that could make me cry if I really sit and think about it. But, crying's just such a weird thing now. I definitely can cry, though. I can watch one of those, really long, sappy commercials about the dogs being abused, right? Everybody knows those commercials. And I can, legit get teary-eyed over this 4-minute commercial. Now, I'm not bawling, but I can get teary-eyed, and it happens quite a lot now. TV shows, or movies, or, again, songs. I get build-up of tears, but at the same time, it's very easy for me to just turn it off. Once I notice, I just brush it off, and then I'm no longer teary-eyed or as emotional as I was, as maybe I would have been pre-teen. I think I'm just a little bit more in control of that area of my emotions, the crying sensor. So I don't really think it's abnormal to not cry when you're on T. I mean, most guys, I don't know what it is, but most guys don't really cry that often. And when they do, it's real emotional. And that's why when you see a guy crying, people usually feel really bad, because if the guy's crying, then it must be pretty intense. And this isn't for every individual. I'm just making a broad assumption. It's usually really intense if a guy's crying. That's why girls are like, oh my god, and he was crying, I felt so bad. And it's because most guys don't cry. And if they do, it's because it's really, really emotional for them. But again, I used to cry probably every twice a month, maybe, over whatever it may be, whether it was crying from pain, from hitting myself, on something, or crying because I'm just so depressed and I'm so lonely, and the other thing I've noticed is that because I am transitioning, and I feel so much more comfortable and more confident and just happier about life, I don't have as many depressing moments. I don't have as many needs to cry. You know what I mean? I'm able to express myself, and I have all these emotions that I'm able to express and deal with, rather than having to suppress all these emotions and feelings. So the need to cry isn't nearly as relevant, or I don't know if relevant's the right word, but the need to cry is right there in front of me. I can't just randomly think of something and cry about it. You know what I mean? So, crying's definitely weird, but I think that a lot of people are used to crying because you're depressed or you're lonely. That's not really why I cry anymore. I cry over, thinking about, if I miss my family. I cry if I miss my family a lot, just because, you don't see them I don't see them anymore, and, it gets upsetting. But being depressed and lonely on that side, not lonely in the sense that, because I've cried over, not feeling like I didn't have friends and stuff. That was kind of a lonely feeling, but lonely as in being depressed lonely, everyone has their bad days, and they're all upset, and, life sucks, blah, 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 but I don't really cry, and I used to cry over those days, but now it's just a sad feeling that I feel like I should be able to cry, but I don't. And maybe I could if I really sat there and tried, but I don't think you should have to try to cry. That's a little, I don't think that's pointless. But, yeah, so crying is really weird. If you can't cry the first few months, don't, get mad that you can't cry. I always say, like I said earlier, you cry without the tears. You're crying on the inside, but not on the outside. It sounds corny, but it's totally true. You have the emotions that you would normally have when you would be crying, but the physical aspect of tears falling down your face is not there. Don't get upset. There will come a time where you will find something that will make you cry. It might have to be something really fucking intense, like losing somebody, or, near-death experiences, or anything like that. That's when you might cry. But, it's mostly really, really emotional times. Last time I cried was my wedding, and that wasn't even a bawling cry, but it was more of a teary cry than when, I see a movie or hear a song. It was definitely more intense and emotional than that. But, yeah, crying's really weird. It is. You don't really think about it, and I hear a lot of people who say they haven't cried in years, and I don't really think that's too healthy. I mean, maybe you're just a really happy person, and you don't have to cry. But, if you can't cry when you're having a really difficult time, or someone's been hurt or killed or something like that, then maybe, you should bring it up to your doctor too, because my first doctor I had when I first transitioned at Callan Lord, she told me, how are you doing? She would ask me a lot of emotional questions and base my my intake of tea on those emotional questions, because she said, she had this one kid who came in, and he couldn't cry when his mother passed away. His mother died of cancer or something dramatic, and it was pretty sudden, and he couldn't cry. He's at the funeral, he's at, picking out caskets, he could not cry. And, she said that the tea was too high. She took him down on his tea intake, however which way medically she felt it was necessary. And within, a month of doing that, he was able to finally deal with the suppressed feelings and emotions of losing his mother. And he was able to cry in his therapy sessions and, just find himself more on an even keel, feeling emotionally fine. I could sit here and listen to, what is it? Use Somebody by The Fray. I could listen to that song and start crying. Not bawling, but I can definitely have tears crying because that song is super emotional to me. So it's weird, but don't get mad at yourself because you can't cry. I don't think you're weird or unemotional. Just because you don't have physical tears falling doesn't mean you're not feeling the same emotions of crying. Definitely easier to cry pre-tea, for sure. You know what I mean? I could be depressed for 10 minutes and start crying pre-tea. Now, depression just doesn't make me cry. That's really just what it comes down to. It's just different doors lead to tears than before. Okay, I think I talked way too long about this topic. Alright. I'm just going to end it real quick. Alright, peace.